start the recording here. And then I'm going to the Facebook page. Click live. That's not, I don't know if that's even the right thing. Hold on. What I need to do is go here and then go to here. And then go to live on Facebook. Okay. I love it, the tracksuit.
It may get too warm.
I'm already too warm. Jeez. Oh. Okay. I'm going to punch in the title here, but can you see us? Or you can see both of us on the screen. Can you see? Does it look different?
Say that again?
You see anything different now on your screen?
No. Should I?
I don't think so. Okay, now we're actually live. And I'm going to log in on my phone. Here we are. I got some spam phone call.
Oh.
Okay. I can cut out all the rigmarole that we were just doing. And here we are.
We're live.
We are live. Welcome to 10% More Savage. Maiden voyage, first podcast, first guest, Kristin Joy Davis. And I am Jody Morningstar. And this podcast is for women coaches. It's for LGBTQ plus folks who coach. This is a place where we're going to celebrate wins. We're going to meet coaches all over the world. And we're going to hear their stories of how they had to be 10% more savage. That's the basis of the title of this podcast. In my personal life, I'm currently a coach, and I previously trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, a variety of things. But when I was training Jiu-Jitsu, I was usually the only woman. Therefore, I was usually not as strong as my opponents. A lot of times I was smaller, and I had to always give 100%. It was frustrating sometimes because I would give 100%, and the very fact that my opponent was going to be stronger than me. I had to change my game. I had to step it up. And there was a time that I was extremely frustrated, and I went to the side of the mat in between matches. And my coach was there, And he knew I was giving 100%. And he said, you just got to be 10% more savage. And that really stuck with me over the years about stepping up, stepping into your game, really being realistic about where you're at, and then accepting the fact that sometimes you have to step up. And it's not about being fair, it's not about being stronger, it's just about being more savage. And that's something that comes from your heart and your spirit. And that's where the name came from. Thank you everybody for your patience with our very first meeting, our very first intro. And I'm super excited to introduce to all of you my new friend, Kristin. She is a coach out of Portland, Oregon, and she has her own special niche, her own calling. And I can't wait to hear about who you are, what you do, and how savage you are. We just became friends recently, and I'm really excited to hear about what you are accomplishing in your life. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So, as you said, I live in Portland, Oregon, and for many years, I've been a teacher in different formats. I substitute taught for a while, and then I was a tutor, and then for the last 6 years, I've been working in a private child care. 4 of those I'd been working with a young, very specific age group called junior kindergartners, and they were a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed my time with them. And in that, during my time working with students, I began to, well, I had noticed in myself first how my language and my energy. I'd get home, I'd be exhausted, and yeah, I started to feel like I want more. I want more energy. What do I need to do? And in that, I took a deep dive into personal work. Started to realize how my language is playing into how my day was going. And once I got on the other side and started gaining back my energy and having more time in my day after work due to having more energy, I realized, more people need this. It's not something that only I can have, other people can have it as well. So I now am focused on teachers and helping them gain back their time and their energy so that they may in turn pour that into their students and give their students what they need and deserve as well.
Can you tell me more about what do you mean about language playing a part?
Yeah. So with that, one thing I realized was I was doing a lot of blaming. Blaming others for what my day looks like, how my day is going. And so usually, like, if I had to work a long day at work, I would say something like they have no respect for my time, or nobody listens to me, nobody cares about me. And with that, when I was realizing how I was talking like that, that language was defeating language. And when I realized, gained some knowledge about how my language affects me and affects my day, I was able to start reflecting and realizing I'm the one in charge of how I react and how I feel. And so I could turn it around and realize it's me. I'm the one that's taking my energy away from me by blaming everybody else. And when I was able to realize I'm the one that's not respecting my time and energy, I was able to start putting up mental boundaries as well. And that gave me back that energy, the energy I was giving out to other people, and giving away my power to other people with with that wording.
So creating the boundaries alone gave you more confidence and more energy just inside yourself.
Yeah. When I was able to reflect and reword what was going on here in my head, then I was able to, yeah, it was a mental boundary that I put up, and it gave me power back. It gave me, and in that power, it gave me energy.
So outside of even making decisions or telling other people your boundaries or expressing your boundaries, just that realization on its own inside of you, changing what you're responsible for and defining the boundaries for yourself, that alone brought you into a new place of confidence and energy.
It did, yes.
Power. How did that come about? How did you realize the language portion? A lot of us don't even, we're not even aware of our self-talk sometimes.
Yeah, that, so with the language part, I first, a year and a half ago, attended a retreat, I guess you would call it, for Training Camp for the Soul. And that was my first introduction into stories and the scripts that we have in our lives and how those affect us, and how we behave throughout the day. And when I really dug into the scripts that I had written for my life, the beliefs that I had, I was able to first start rewriting what I wanted my life to look like. And after training camp, I also was introduced to a program called Procabulary with Mark England. And that Procabulary focuses on architect language versus conflict language, and really dove into how those how the way we talk, the way we think, the words that are coming out of our mouth affect us. And so those are the two big things that really helped me to make that shift.
Can you give me an example of something you looked at in your own language, or something that was really solid for you, where you had an epiphany? Oh, I'm saying that to myself.
Yeah, the biggest one for me really had to do with when I was working, I would open up the center in the morning, and I would be talking with the other person that I opened with, and it was a lot of venting and complaining about how the day was run or what things looked like. And there would usually be a pointing the finger at an all-knowing they, like they have no respect for me, they don't care if I have a life outside of the work. And this all-knowing they was ruining my day every single day. And when I realized that they don't even realize I have a life outside of work, like this is my life. This is what, as far as that all-knowing they is concerned, my job is my life. And am I even showing anybody that it's any different? Because if I'm saying yes to everything, working late, coming in extra hours, and I volunteer to do anything that would put extra hours on my plate, I'm the one that's giving away that power, because I'm saying yes to everything and I'm not respecting my own time. I'm not respecting my boundaries. And instead, I'm giving that away to these invisible people. And that one really really got me, once I realized that internally I'm blaming everybody, anybody and everybody else, I started realizing this is on me. I am the one that needs to be stepping up and taking responsibility. I was able to look at my day different and show up differently in my classroom as well.
How did that look different?
That's a good question. Mainly, what it did for me was in the classroom, in a good, let's go with a good example of, um, I, if I got frustrated, usually it's easy to raise your voice and yell and get frustrated with the kids because I'm feeling frustrated. So what? I'm going to pass my frustration on to them. And when I started realizing I'm in charge, my emotions, I can control them, and I'm the adult in the room, I was able to start listening to the kids and hearing what they needed, because I was also listening to what I needed. So when I was in touch with hearing what I needed and in tune with taking care of myself after work, I was able to give that in turn to the students as well.
Did you see a big change or reaction with how you related or the stress level of your group of kids? Did the energy shift after that?
It did. So the I had one year where it was a mix. They got me before and after I had the mental shift. So they got a little bit of both. And we had to do some work in order to move past patterns that I'd created throughout the year. And toward the end of the year, though, I was able to see there was more opening of conversation with the kids. And the next year, when we went into the school year, I started it off different. And instead of going in and having certain expectations, I realized they're young 5-year-olds. They have a lot that they are learning, a lot that they need to be guided through. So I use affirmations with them whenever they were frustrated with something, like if they were having a hard time with getting their code on. I would have them try 3 times on their own, and then after 3 times they could ask me. And when it was successful, we'd do an affirmation, like either I can ask for help or I can get my code on by myself, whatever was appropriate for the time. We'd do a little high five and celebrate the fact that they were able to do this. And throughout this school year, there were far fewer behavior issues. If there was a problem, they felt open to come to me versus fighting with each other and not telling me. So the communication was more open and behavior issues dropped.
That's really incredible. It sounds like they felt very safe to just operate in that environment, and your energy was safe to them. It sounds like a huge change. And was that positivity and that new energy, is that what started to lead you into coaching?
Yeah, when I started to realize that I have changed with the mindset shift and what it did for me, I also saw what it did for the students, and I, in that, realized I can affect 10 students a year, because that's about how many kids were in my classroom, by myself, which is a fair amount of students. Or I can coach, reach out to teachers and help guide them, give them those same tools that I found so helpful, and affect even more. So that is what ultimately what led me to coaching, was the realization that if when we have more adults in the children's lives that are having these realizations and able to set these boundaries, then it will trickle down to the kids.
That's really beautiful. And it is, if I might say, super savage to take responsibility for your own stuff and your own energy and your language and your boundaries. That's a huge stepping up. And it's so beautiful that the kids could see that energy and build off of that. You told me a story about a particular story. We talked about the putting on the coat, and you told me a story about a little girl that just would cry. Things were difficult and you just cry. And a solution will come out of that. Not a super effective coping mechanism all the time, but when you're 5, it might have been pretty effective. So you talked about her breathing. Can you tell me about teaching the kids about breathing? What was that about? What was that like?
Yeah. So the student in particular that you mentioned who would cry, with her, it was a little different than when with the rest of the class. So she usually would cry pretty quickly, so she could bump into a friend or trip and she'd start crying. And so with her, when that happened, I'd come over and talk with her and give her the comfort that she's looking for, as well as, while I'm listening, telling her, I want you to breathe, do deep belly breaths, fill up your stomach. And so also teaching her like breathing into her belly, getting the hands to move. And when she's able to breathe well enough to speak, then tell me what happened. And so usually by the time she's able to breathe well enough to tell me what happened, she'd run away and be like, I'm okay now. So we would focus really on breathing into the belly and moving her hands on her belly when taking those deep breaths. And then that trickled over to home, where her mom sent me a message one day saying, thank you for what we were doing in the classroom, because she had a Band-Aid she was taking off, and usually she'd fight it and cry and didn't want it to come off. And this time, instead of fighting it, she was taking deep breaths and going, I am brave, and telling herself while she's taking the deep breaths, I am brave. And she pulled off the Band-Aid, and there may have been a few tears. However, it wasn't like it usually was in the past. And she was able to tell herself she was brave, and she was breathing and comforting herself in that. So,
Oh, there are a few tears now. That's really beautiful. That is really a huge thing that you passed on to this little person. She, in 20 years, she could be doing some incredible, incredible things and thinking of teacher Kristin and just breathing and saying, I am brave. That will stay with her for the rest of her life. Not only that, but she's an example to her parents as well. So that exponential influence is so beautiful.
thank you.
Do you currently work with teachers? Do you currently have a program in which you pass on this goodness?
I currently am open. I am building it right now. And I do have one-on-one coaching, and I'm working toward doing group coaching with teachers as well, with a program that will be built around taking care of yourself first, filling up your cup, so that instead of draining the energy from ourselves and giving to everybody else first, and then giving ourselves what's left over. The program is designed to encourage and guide teachers to fill their cups first, so that instead of draining the battery, they're able to go in and give from the overflow.
How have people responded? This seems like a really good time in history to be reaching out to people that serve others. That population in particular is kind of having a time right now. Mm-hmm. Everybody's having a time. It's September 2020. We'll all look back and go, wow, I was having a time. And things are up in the air, and teachers, a lot of people that I've spoken with they don't even know what the plan is. So it's very insecure for people, and I assume that people would be responding really well to what you have to offer.
Yeah, teachers are one of the greatest communities of servers. You're giving to this classroom of students of whatever age, whether they're high schoolers or elementary kids. Teachers are servants at heart, and so they want to give. That's what called them into the profession to begin with. And in this giving, they're giving to a classroom full of students, they're giving to their families, they're giving to their friends, and then at what's left over, if there's anything left over, they give to themselves. And that ends up draining. And there's a term for that called teacher tired. So right now that teacher tired is way higher than previous years. Usually you start hearing the phrase, there's no tired like teacher tired, closer to maybe Christmas break or even toward the end of the year. And right now, with some schools in some states have started, some are doing hybrid models, some are fully back, some are doing distance learning still. Some haven't started yet, and they're not sure what the school year is going to look like. And with that, that's a big mental load that's happening with all these questions that are up in the air. And the phrase teacher tired has already been thrown out. And
it's September 3rd.
Mm-hmm. And some teachers haven't even gone back yet, and they're feeling exhausted, they're feeling drained.
That's a huge amount of burnout. I can feel it when you describe it. And I love that is a super specific niche that you understand and want to reach out to. Have you had, do you have people reaching out to you currently for services?
I currently have not yet. I am open, and yeah, I am building that right now. So
that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. The timing is perfect, and we're definitely going to get all your information out there. Both we'll talk about it, and I'll also put it in the comments or the liner notes so that people can reach out to you for your specific coaching. That would be really, like we were talking about, is exponential. Mm-hmm. When you reach one of these folks that also reach out, and it just grows. And I'm excited that kind of depth, the boundaries and the language, that you're bringing that to that population, because the way that you reached it with yourself and then we're able to pass that on, that I could see a lot of energy and love and positive vibes growing out of that in a situation that with burnout and exhaustion and frustration, that would be a place that could really, it would make a huge difference to change that energy.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned vocabulary.
I did.
I'm a little bit familiar, but I would love
Mm-hmm.
for you to talk more about where you learned these skills and how that stood out to you and what vocabulary is.
Yes. So going back to not this past March, the March before, 2019, when going through the program training camp for the soul. First off, I realized that I hadn't been speaking up into myself using my voice. I'd hidden my voice for most likely my whole entire life. I will say my whole life, because I was not speaking at all in kindergarten, to the point where my teacher was paying me a penny every time I talked to her. So yeah, my voice was something that I wasn't using and I didn't know how to use. And while at training camp for the soul, once I started realizing like, oh, I do have a voice, I want to know how to use it, I had met Mark England, who is the founder of Vocabulary, and he offered the chance to go through Vocabulary with him after training camp for the soul. And as somebody who's learning how to use their voice for the first time, it was a very important tool for me. What the program does is it teaches that there are basically two types of language. There's conflict language and there's architect language. And as you can tell, conflict language it sounds pretty harsh, pretty rough. And it's actually more or less the first language that we all learn. It's the playing the blame game, and it's their fault. Or using soft talk as well, which I was really good at.
Can you define that?
Yes, I will. Soft talk, there are words like sort of, kind of, I think. There's more and I'm forgetting them, but with soft talk, a really good example of how I used to request something would be, do you think you could maybe do me a favor later on if you have a chance? And so, as you can see, even when I'm saying it, my shoulders are going up. I'm not confident in what I'm saying. So somebody may say yes, or they could say no, and I'm really opening up that door wide for the no, as well as I'm not really letting them know what I want. Do I want help or don't I? And when I'm not letting somebody know what I want, then I've just opened up the door to be walked all over. And I was really good at doing like keeping that door open for the no instead of asking for the yes. And after I began to catch that I was doing that, I started asking more solidly for what I wanted. Like, I have an appointment at 4 o'clock today and I need to be off work at 3:30 in order to make it in time. Or I have something that needs to be moved that's too heavy for one person. Will you please help me? Instead of, could you maybe sort of kind of do this thing for me if you have time? So that was a big one for me, where I gave away my power with language.
That's huge.
Yeah. And go ahead.
Sorry, just that statement. I was giving away my power with my language. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to sit on that statement for a second. People don't realize that. And when we examine what we're offering and the language that we use, sometimes it's pretty obvious where the power lies in that, and that we're not claiming our power or our boundaries by conflict language, like you said, soft talk, negations. Conflict is such a strong word.
Mm-hmm.
How when you transition into architect language, can you tell me about that? I like that word, architect, to build.
Yeah, that's a good one because it build and create. It puts you in creation mode. And actually, that is one thing that started happening for me as well once I was able to start rephrasing my language from that conflict, the war language, into that architect creating language. It opened up creativity. It opened up space in my head. So shifting from focusing on what everybody else is doing and worrying about what they thought of me, that was huge. Part of what was going on in my head was, if I do something that will upset them, then how is that going to affect me? And instead, and that's conflict language. So instead, moving from that into what is best for me, building the architect language, I reflecting on it, like I need to take time to check in with myself. I am in charge of how I react to a situation. They're in charge of how they react to the situation, and how they react has nothing to do with what's going on in me.
The separation of, you're not responsible for their reaction. That's that's really easy to say. Not as easy to live. Have you seen just giant changes in your life? You went, you transitioned from being an in classroom teacher of littles to coaching teachers. That's a pretty large swing. Are there other areas of your life that have been affected by this?
Yes. If you only had known me before all of this, I have changed drastically. So I mentioned that I didn't talk at all in kindergarten. I didn't use my voice. I didn't know how to speak into what I needed. And so I didn't. I would keep a lot of things bottled up and inside of me, and they'd build and build and build. And it wasn't healthy for me either. So I have moved from holding things inside, not doing what I want to do, which I really didn't know either what I wanted to do. I knew I enjoyed teaching, and beyond that, though, I felt like there was something more for me, and I didn't know what it was. When I started to realize what, like reflecting on how I'm the in charge. I'm in charge of how I react to life. I'm able to create the life that I love. I realize, and I gained my own power. I gained my voice for the first time in my life. When I realized all of those things, I became a different person. I don't even know if I'd recognize myself from 2 years ago if I ran into her.
Only 2 years ago.
Yeah. So it's, yeah, a lot has
Huge
changed.
shift.
Mm-hmm.
I it's a those changes it makes ripples through your whole life. So you talked about going to training camp for the soul and vocabulary and changing your language from, if you could help me move this heavy thing, that would be really cool. Which is not really what you wanted to say. What you wanted to say was, come help me move this heavy thing. And then your whole life changes, and it's infused into all parts of your life. I mentioned that we are brand new friends, and I'm also familiar with this language patterning, and it's so easy to be friends with you. You know, um, we both can express what we want. Would you like to go here? Yes, I would, but I would like to A, B, and C. Okay, that's cool with me. I could B or C. And then it's just easy because everybody can communicate without those filters and boundaries. And well, I said it in that certain way, so you were supposed to know that I was mad. You know,
Right.
that it's so inefficient. And the fact that you saw so many changes in your life and so many changes in the people around you, that you step up into a leadership position to want to share those skills to improve other people's lives around you, that's pretty savage.
Oh, let me point out, being friends with you, with the doing A, B, or C, if one thing I found fun was the option of ninja skating when we went roller skating. And I know 2 years ago, even the thought of doing something that could be frowned on, I'd be like, nope, won't do it. I could get in trouble. And now I'm like, not looking to do anything illegal, just fun.
Mm-hmm.
Fun. And now having that shift too of like, all right, I could be down.
Nice. I do remember that moment, and there was nothing illegal about it. We were going roller skating. I had 2 pairs of skates in the back of the car. Kristin was driving me around, and due to current circumstances, places were closed, and we batted around the idea of being able to skate certain places at other times, and it was very awesome that we were out on this adventure and could choose what we want to do and communicate with each other so well, so that, because I could have said something that was not super clear, and then you feel threatened, and then if you get defensive, then you say other things back to me to kind of change what I'm thinking. And everybody's familiar with this pattern. I say this in a sarcastic way so that you know that I'm mad, and it can get so off track, and then you end up in a fight about something that was not anything that anybody was even thinking about. So the fact that we could communicate clearly and get really jazzed about doing stuff together and taking risks. We ended up going skating at this other park that did not have a really good surface. I'll be honest. I felt really bad that it was so gravelly and uneven, but you totally stepped up, and nobody crashed, and there was no blood, and we had a really good time. And that's the result of architect language. That's the result of being able to make a new friend, speak honestly with each other, and do things that you both enjoy without any kind of defensiveness or weirdness. And I really appreciate that about you. It's super exciting that you're reaching out to coach other people on this, because you can tell that it's made a huge impact in your life, and it sounds like it's your passion, passing that on to other people, especially teachers that are feeling burnout or teacher tired, because you've been there, and that's a place where we can come from to really help others right where they are. Yay, we are almost out of time. This was so exciting. I am really excited to open up your information so that people can get in touch with you and ask either directly, like if they're teachers, or ask for information from you and on your coaching to pass on to other people that they know could use it. And I really appreciate you being here today. And I love, can you tell me about this, what you're wearing there?
Yes,
Shiny.
this is my tiger. Those are tiger tracksuit.
Nice.
That, yes, I bought myself because there's something about putting on a tracksuit that when you put it on, you feel you feel more savage.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I love that beast, the tiger,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's shiny. And the way that you've described yourself, I'm guessing that you may not have worn a shiny tiger tracksuit over 2 years ago.
Most likely not.
This is the new tiger tracksuit, Kristin. Nice. Well, everybody, feel free to reach out to myself or Kristin. I'll put the information out there on how to get in touch. And I would love for you to reach out to her for her coaching because she's been there. She's badass. Excuse my language. And I respect what she does. Next week, we're going to have Ashley Bledsoe, sex and relationship coach, with probably one of the best giggles about everybody I know. I don't know.
Oh, she's amazing.
She has one of those contagious, beautiful, light spirits, and I'm really looking forward to having her next week as well to talk about her coaching and her journey and the savagery that is currently in her life. She's a friend of both of ours, and I'm sure we're both super excited to promote her as well and introduce her to all of you. How are you feeling?
Good. Calm.
Calm. Nice. It's been a really beautiful experience, and I'm so happy that you were on my very first exploration into this.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I appreciate your support so much. And I thank all of you for tuning in or watching this recording later. And thank you for your support. This is 10% More Savage. And I love you all.